Okay, this is a longer game, so we can really dig deep and talk about a lot of concepts here. Okay, so what should we play? Let's play another Sicilian, shall we? And hopefully we'll get a chance to repeat the Najdorf. Maybe we'll play another Najdorf. Let's play a Sicilian. All right. Yeah, let's play a Najdorf. Now, does anybody... I basically just gave it away. How does the Najdorf go? What move does black play in this position? So, yeah, d6. Now, we've mostly been playing the accelerated dragon, which I'm teaching to Charlie in the speedrun, but lately we've experimented a little bit with the Najdorf. Now we take. This is the open Sicilian. Knight f6, and after knight c3, we have several possible moves. g6 is the traditional dragon. There's knight c6, that is the rouser, or the classical Sicilian. There's e6, there's e5. e5 is not great, but the Najdorf has a special place in Sicilian players' hearts, and that is the move a6. a6, and as we've discussed, the sort of most immediate idea is to cover the b5 square, right? To stop the bishop, the knight from going to b5, and Chess Ninja plays bishop e2. Now, bishop e2 is one of the most popular responses to the Najdorf. It is considered to be among white's quietest options. So it's... Okay, quiet should be taken within the proper context. That doesn't mean the position is boring. The position is still very interesting, but the reason this is considered to be relatively quiet in comparison is because white actually wants to castle short, whereas in many lines, bishop g5, bishop e3, white actually castles long, so you have opposite side castling. Now, Najdorf players are split between two categories. The categories roughly are e6 players and then e5 players. So e6 leads to a structure called the Scheveningen structure. I'll talk about this after the game. But I have always been an e5 player, and those of you who do not play the Najdorf, this move might seem very strange. I don't remember if I talked about it. I think I did talk about it in the context of another move, so maybe some of you guys were there for my previous explanation. But if you weren't and you're not a Najdorf player, if this move doesn't seem weird to you, then you're doing something wrong. Why does this move look like a big positional mistake? No, this is the theoretical move. Why does this look like a big positional mistake? What does it weaken? Yeah, so it weakens d6, and correspondingly it weakens the d5 square. But this is why I don't recommend the Najdorf to beginners. This is precisely why. Because you have to violate these rules, these basic positional rules. And it's like you have to earn the right to violate them. You can only violate them if you know them. And for beginners, it's more important to practice applying the rules before you practice violating them. If you practice violating them first, and you never practice applying them, and you build essentially what will ultimately turn out to be a rotten foundation. But in this game, I will attempt to explain kind of by degrees why this is justifiable to play e5. There isn't one single reason why black gets away with the move e5. It's a very complex network of different reasons. So first of all, we have to develop our pieces. That is the same in any opening. We have to develop our pieces. In particular, we need to get our king out of the center. So bishop e6 is possible, and bishop e7 is also possible. The main move is bishop e7. You basically want to prepare castling as early as possible. And also this bishop on c8 potentially might be fianchettoed on b7. The first of the very constellation of reasons why d5 square is not the end of the world is that black has a lot of pieces that can contest the d5 square. In particular, you could put the bishop on e6, and this knight on f6 can be supported by its brother on d7. So you could basically have two pieces directly, one piece indirectly, controlling the d5 square, which makes it incredibly hard for white to actually get a knight on d5 and establish it there in practice. Because black has not a game, practice. Because black has all of these pieces clustered on the king side. I hope that kind of makes sense. So here we castle. Again, we delay the development of this bishop. Let's see what white does. And that's reason number one why the weakness of the d5 square is not as devastating as it may appear. The second sort of broad set of reasons consists in the fact that And bear with me for a second here. Black has counterplay on essentially both sides of the board. And one of the sources of Black's counterplay is this b pawn advance to b4. So even though d5 may be weak, it is often counterbalanced by Black's counterplay on both sides of the board. And hopefully we'll get a chance to spell that out concretely. That doesn't mean that games have not been lost because a knight has landed on d5 and sat there until the rest of the game. I will even show you a game that I played where I mishandled the position, and I allowed a knight on d5 and I lost the game. That's the danger of playing the Najdorf. That's not to say d5 square is not important. Okay, now it is finally time to deploy the bishop to e6 and add another protector to the d5 square. Queen d3, by the way, is indeed a legitimate move in this position. That is a line. But let's see how he follows it up. Yeah, so I'll explain the move e6 after the game. The Scheveningen structure I used to play, but I never really liked it, and I'll explain some of the reasons why. One of the reasons why is that, okay, so bishop g5. What should we do now? I've already explained the general set of moves that Black normally plays in this position. What do you guys think should be preferred here? Yeah. So the move is knight bd7 is correct. And we get this situation where it's very hard to dislodge a knight from f6. If white takes, then we will simply take back. Yeah, good. And now, as I explained, we have all four of our minors clustered together in the center, which is actually kind of a good thing. And we are ready to begin queenside operations. Queenside operations can refer to two specific different things. The first, that's the issue. You got to be careful about this thing because this can, yeah, so dropping the knight is chess ninja. I'm going to take it. Of course, I could not take the knight and stuff, but I don't really believe in that. He'll get another chance to play me. I think that this is also something instructive. And I'm going to make a lesson out of this. I know I might sound obnoxious, but part of the benefit of, and Charlie will experience this, part of the benefit of playing something most people don't play at a level where people mostly play e5 is that people get these unfamiliar positions. And unfamiliar positions result in blunders. That's not a coincidence. That's just something that generally tends to happen. Okay, but let's continue playing. We're up a piece. That's great, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't continue making Najdorf-like moves. Thank you, Grounded 132. Could anybody propose a typical Sicilian move here? We can activate one of our other pieces and put it on a very nice little square. Yeah, so let the knight stay on d7. The knights are kind of good here. Yeah, rook a, c8. Those of you who play the Sicilian, I mean, this is just such a typical move, applying pressure on the knight. Many times you do want to sacrifice the exchange on c3. That is also a legitimate idea. But here we won't need to do that because we're up a piece. It also is not a bad idea at some point to tickle the bishop with h6 just to create a little bit of luft to our king. Maybe ask the bishop what it wants to do. Okay. And in the meantime, as he's thinking, thank you guys once again. Thank you very, very much. We've got 3,000 plus at this late hour watching the speedrun. I appreciate everybody's support a great deal. And it's been awesome. This has been a great stream, and we'll be finishing up very soon. But let's try to finish this game off in style. Thank you, Dayton Perguy, for the prime. Okay, so bishop drops back to d2 on its own volition. And it should not take you guys long to see that it x-rays the queen. There might not be any specific threat that results from this x-ray, but I don't want to play with fire. I certainly don't want to play with fire. I want to move this queen away. Where do we move this queen away? We have several good squares. But since we already put a rook on c8, we know that the c file is a nice, let's just say, Hilton Marriott Inn and Suites for the queen and the rook. In the Najdorf, this is very common. You put the queen on c7 and the rook on c8. Right. The queen and the rook staying in a nice little Holiday Inn c file. And you might look at this and say, well, what does this do exactly? Why are we doubling on the c file? We're not attacking the knight. Like, what are you doing? The knight is not hanging. The pawn is perfectly capable of defending this knight. Well, again, this is where the concept of pressure comes in, and pressure is a very misunderstood concept by a lot of people. Pressure refers to a sort of a less concrete and more abstract state of the position where a particular piece, let's say, cannot move because if it moves, then pieces fall behind it. So the knight, for example, is under pressure, right? Knight cannot move because the c2 pawn would have fallen. That's why white plays rook a to c1. He's trying to perhaps free up the knight on c3, although the knight has nowhere to go. Yeah, there's many good moves here. We can play bishop c4 and trade the bishops. But again, there's no particular need to do that. Let's actually play typical Najdorf moves. There is one more typical Najdorf move that we have not yet played. It is also a move on the queen side. I mentioned this move. We can expand and create a stronghold, not d5. d5 would blunder the pawn, but the move b5, yeah. b5, expanding on the queen side, creating a sort of, I would say, almost an outpost on c4, where we can actually bring the knight to c4 if we wanted to, or the bishop, or even the queen. And also, do not forget, the queen now has access to the b7 square, from where it could pressure the e4 pawn. So we have probably 10 possible ways of playing this position. They're all good. So don't think that your proposed line is necessarily bad because I'm choosing this. I'm just trying to play in more Najdorf-like style. Yes, if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to one channel per month for free. I'm always honored when you choose my channel, but zero obligation. Okay. We might play for d5, Sarah. No, we absolutely might. Thank you, Andrew's friend Jonathan with the prime. No, actually, we will play for d5. So, and Pal CTV, thank you for the prime. Sorry to pressure you guys. Okay. No, Sarab, you're absolutely right. The ultimate goal here is to play d5. That's exactly what we're doing. And in order to prepare d5 in the best possible way, what kinds of moves might you guys propose? The first is knight b6 to prepare d5, yeah. But the problem with the move knight b6 is, but be careful, right? He's played the move b3, guys, so that knight on b6 is not going to have prospects in terms of coming to c4. It's only going to be preparing d5. Let's do something a little bit more flexible. Thank you, Axinia and Snapweave, both subbing. Let's do something a little bit more flexible. I like the move queen b7. This is more flexible because, yes, it prepares d5, but it also is a standalone good move. It just pressures the e4 pawn, and we're actually threatening to play knight c5 here. So this concept of flexibility I've talked about many times. You have a particular idea, choose the most flexible way of executing it, which means choose the move that even if your idea were to fail, even if the roof were to come off and you were to realize that your plan is crap, the move that you played to prepare that plan is in and of itself a healthy move. That's not always going to be possible, but when possible, you want to try to do that. Thank you, Axinia, for 2 months, and Snapweave, both. More subs. We love subs. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And let's see, 4,000 viewers. Jeez Louise. Jeez Louise, I was planning to end at 1. Okay, so this is okay, and Trekkie Monster and Waynock priming both. So what should we do? Should we go for d5? Or is there a better move? Yeah, we are endowed with tremendous opportunities here. Let's go knight c5. 1, 2, 3. I'm just being a jerk. Okay, knight takes c4, and we win the pawn, and now we can go d5 in the best possible version. Okay. So what should we take on e4 with? And both pieces are fine, but what do you guys think? Yeah, so I'm always torn on how to present whether or not you should trade when you're up material. But the way I'll put it is this way. If you can trade without any concessions and you are up a piece, by all means, let's trade the queens because that simplifies our task. Why does this force a trade? Because he cannot move the queen away. He would drop his bishop. So he has to trade in one way or the other. Also, knight takes d4, as you guys are pointing out, just a tiny bit uncomfortable, the fact that the knight will be pinned. The queen is undefended. White has nowhere to exploit that. Because you can play d5 on the next move and support the knight and cut out the pin. But nonetheless, queen takes e4 is great. We didn't even need to play d5. We just win the pawn. Okay, so Chess Ninja does opt to give up the bishop, but now he's 2 pieces down. I think he wants this, but this is going to be very easily dealt with by our army of pieces. We're actually potentially going to win a 3rd piece. And he resigns. Good game. Chess Ninja, that was very nice. Of course, knight a5 was the blunder, and you played well in the first part of the opening, but after this it was very, very hard really to do anything significant. Nonetheless, thanks for continuing to play. Thanks for being resilient. And we have a lot of things nonetheless to discuss. Think of the W with a prime. So, the Najdorf, right? Now, bishop e2 is once again known as a relatively quiet move. Anatoly Karpov, Garry Kasparov's arch nemesis, one of the strongest positional players in history, was a champion of the bishop e2 move because it's kind of the right balance of tactics and positional chess. It's still Najdorf, so it's still tactical, but it's more positional than like bishop e3 or bishop g5. Thank you, Lawrence Salafanti with the prime. Let me show you guys one of my most painful experiences with the move e6. And through the lens of this game, through the prism of this tragedy that I suffered in the 2006 Pan American Championships in Ecuador against Jorge Cory, who now is a grandmaster from Peru. He's rated over 2650. But back then we were both bright-eyed and bushy-tailed 2000s. I will show you guys why I personally never, I never vibed to this move. Let me just find this game. And I like showing my games, from the old days, just to give you guys a little bit of a personal touch. What makes me think of openings the way that I do? What were the formative experiences in my early chess career? Okay, Pan American Championships, Ecuador. I got 3rd place in that tournament, but this was I had 2 losses out of 9 games. Both were in the Najdorf Scheveningen. One against Ray Robson, one against Jorge Cory. The game against Jorge was significantly more. And Anonymous with a $5 donation. Thank you for the instructional videos. You are very welcome, my friend. Thank you so much for the $5 donation. You can see that I played the Scheveningen. And a lot of people look at this and say, well, wait a second. This is the same as going e5, but we aren't weakening the d5 square. So what the heck is the drawback of this move? Well, there's a couple of drawbacks. And the first of them is that you obstruct the bishop. So you basically limit the development of the bishop. The bishop kind of has to fianchetto itself at some point. Or you have to find some sort of alternate arrangement on d7. That's a whole problem. And the second problem is that the pawn on e6, as you guys will see, is actually a target. And it's a target due to the very, very typical plan of white eventually going f4, f5. Draith 95, thank you for the 3 months. The third problem, and this is what Cory emphasizes in the game, is that black is very, very cramped. And because black is cramped, it's going to be very hard to defend against certain types of kingside attacks. When you go e5, you make it literally harder for white to bring about any kind of attack. Watch how this game proceeds. I seem to do everything normally. That's why this game basically ended my Scheveningen career, because I just made normal development moves. Okay, castle, knight c6. Okay, he goes f4, queen c7, normal, okay. Rook e8, bishop f8, that's a typical defensive idea. Now I played rook b8 to prepare b5. I seem to be playing normal Sicilian moves, knight a5 to get to c4. Here, I went g6 to try to blunt the queen. And now look at what he does. He goes e5. This move would not have been possible if black's pawn was on e5. And in this position, Cory plays an absolutely sick move. This is actually correct. This is a sexy move, and it wins the game on the frickin' spot. It comes absolutely a bolt from the blue. I thought I was fine here. And this is a bolt from the blue, a super instructive move. Because it turns out that all of black's pieces are sort of cramped on the bottom rows. The king is incredibly weak, which means that white can actually just slam a knight onto d5. Very good. Sam or B. Aslan 1, thank you for the prime. Sorry, thank you for the tier 1. And the game is over. He takes d5, bishop takes d5, and look at the pressure that black is exerting on the f7 pawn. The problem is that if black takes on e5 with a knight, then to add insult to injury, rook takes f7 is possible. The knight cannot take, because if queen takes c7, winning the queen, black has to give up a queen, and he's still going to get checkmated. So This is just horrible. And I played rook e5, bishop f7. Now knight e6, again, exploiting the undefended queen. Thank you. Another sub, Fadilef, thank you for the prime. Queen c6, he plays rook takes the... I mean, this is just nasty stuff. Now the rook loses its support. I played rook takes e6, and he just starts taking everything. Queen e5 check, intermediate move. Queen takes b8. Bishop f7 wins another piece, and now wins another piece, and I resign. So he literally demolished me. And I was a dirty little bastard. I mean, bishop e5 at the end, by the way, hoping for rook takes e5, queen f1 checkmate. But a guy of Jorge Corey's caliber. Nope, queen takes e5 check, simple liquidation, takes, and he's up a rook. So that was an absolutely brutal game. I lost a couple more like these too. So I was like, all right, no more. No more Scheveningen. In the Scheveningen, the reason that I struggled in it is not because it's bad. The Scheveningen, even to this day, is considered to be fine. Although e5 is definitely the favored move among strong grandmasters at this point, but Garry Kasparov played e6. It's what I would define as a come-to-papa system. There's certain systems within openings that I would define as come-to-papa systems. That's systems where you basically, you adopt the Karate Kid stance, and you're like, just come to papa. These are like the bumper cars, right? You just put these out here, e6 and d6, come to papa, go f5, go e5. I don't want him to come to papa. I want to be the one coming to papa. Okay, so that's personally why I don't like e6. To me, it's too provocative. I don't like playing in this provocative of a style, and I prefer to have a little bit more space to myself. Thank you all, Perico 2 for the prime. So does that make sense? That's partially why... that's basically why I don't like the Scheveningen, and this game influenced me. And I played the final Scheveningen in my life in 2006. Ever since then, I've played e5 with a good amount of success. Yeah, and this is also kind of the reason that a lot of people don't like the French. You get similar types of positions. All right. So e5, knight b3, bishop e7, castles, queen d3, bishop e6. Now, queen d3 is a legitimate move, but the best way to follow up the move queen d3, the point of this move is to overprotect the e4 pawn. And overprotection essentially means that you are freeing up a piece that was previously protecting a pawn. Now that piece is free to move about. The captain. The captain has turned off the seatbelt sign. The captain has turned off the seatbelt sign for the c3 knight. It no longer is charged with defending the e4 pawn, which means that it could go to d5. Now, obviously, putting a knight on d5 here does not come with quite the same effect as putting the knight on d5 when black cannot take it. Here, black can take on d5, and you get a very interesting structure where white starts attacking on the queen side, black starts attacking on the king side, and you get this kind of very combative play on either side of the board. I don't want to delve into this too deeply. You just get an interesting position. Queen d3 is one of many possible lines in this position. Okay, but bishop g5 is fine. Of course, knight a5. I get why you play this move. It is a typical move in these positions. Sadly, it just doesn't pass muster here, of course, because of the queen. Thank you, Page AIX, for the prime. And I think that maybe rook, sorry, not rook c1, but maybe rook d1, or maybe something peaceful like h3 should have been preferred, although black already has a very comfortable game after b5. Maybe you could also play a4. That's another very typical Najdorf move for white to prevent b5. Okay, I actually like a4. I think that would have been white's best move. And the game continues. Black plays rook c8, and you go back and forth. So this is just a position. Okay. One moment. Yeah. So does that make sense, right? A4 is what I would prefer. Now here, everything else is very simple. Queen c7. We play the flexible move. We get the knight to e4. And we take the second piece and we win the game. So after knight takes a5, after queen takes a5, there was nothing really interesting that happened. But yeah, I mean, what I would recommend for you, Ninja, if you want to keep playing this line, there's a move here where you play f4. Oh, wow, look at that synchronization. Kishin 2 asking the same question just as I mentioned that this was possible. That was pretty cool. Yeah, so f4 is possible in this position. But it doesn't quite come with the same effect as f4 when the pawn is on e6. And here you can actually take on f4. Bishop takes f4, And you get a very, very typical structure where it may appear that the pawn on d6 now is very weak. But the pawn on d6, just like we've heard the expression, bad bishops defend good pawns, well, bad pawns defend good squares. And the pawn on d6 is a supporting pawn for a piece that could appear on what square? And we can get that piece there right now. I can even show you, I've done this many times before. So here's a very simple example from one of my games. Warm Milk Gang, thank you for the prime. So what square am I talking about, first of all? What square am I talking about, first of all? So this pawn on, e5. And we can get the knight there by playing knight c6, knight e5. And that knight on e5 is solid as a rock. Now, have I done something like this before in one of my games? Absolutely. This idea of taking on f4 and then putting a knight on e5 is about as old as the hills. I mean, it literally is one of the main Najdorf ideas in this variation. So here, for example, in just one moment, you guys will see me applying this idea in one of my old games. All right. So here we see one of my old games from 2008. You guys can see bishop e2, e5. At this point, I had already transitioned. And you get a4 in this position, which is also a variation. We go knight bd7, rook c8. Here is me playing the typical moves, knight bd7, rook c8, f4. And you guys will never guess what I did in this position. You guys will never guess what two moves I played in this position. As old as the lands. It's almost as if we just talked about how to respond to f4 in the Najdorf. Yeah, knight takes e4? Nah, girl. E takes f4, knight e5, beautiful. Getting the knight onto this very beautiful square. And he did take the knight, but now, essentially, as a result of him taking the knight, this bishop on e7, which lay dormant, now gets a very juicy square on b4, and black gets a very nice endgame position, which I ultimately was able to convert into a win. So that actually is one of the key ideas to know for black if you play in the Najdorf, is to take on f4 and put a knight on e5. That's very traditional, very classical, and now there's nothing wrong with it. It's just old school idea. Okay. That was a little overview of the bishop e2 Najdorf. There's so much more to talk about. Bishop e2 is a vast line. I'm pretty sure there have been books written about bishop e2 alone, and there is a ton of sub variations that each feature their own signature. Thank you, Jay Daradanos. And I actually played one of the nicest games I've ever played in the bishop e2 line with black against Alexander Shabalov when I was rated about 2350. I beat Shabalov on the black side of this line with black, having played e5. And once I switched from the Shevenen again, it was like I was blind, but now I see. So yeah, I played a super nice game against Shabalov, and that really inspired me to keep playing the Najdorf. Okay. Puffy, Rad, thank you for the tier 1. Man, these subs are just flying in, and that's exactly what I like to see. Puffy Rad says, hey Daniel, I've been really enjoying your speedrun content. You've definitely been opening my eyes with your clear, explanatory style. Thank you so much. Well, thank you. That is a very sweet message. 7676 as we creep up once again on 8,000 subs. That is just ridiculous, guys. I am just beyond spoiled. I can show you the game against Shabalov if people are interested in the game, or I can maybe play one last speedrun game. What do people think? Do you want to see the game against Shabalov really quickly? I'm happy to show it. I don't know. I don't think I've shown it on stream before. Okay, you want the speedrun game. All right. Speedrun it is. Let's play. Who shall we play? There's Selinator. Who's Selinator? It's all good. That's why I'm doing it. Who is Selinator? Can you announce yourself? I'll play A900 maybe. Well, I'll show Charlie the Vienna Gambit, so you guys will just have to wait until our next lesson. One moment, please. Yeah, we've got over 4,000 viewers. That's crazy. VinnyCat20, thank you for the tier 1. So, Selinator going once. You have to announce yourself in the chat. If you guys challenge me and I'm about to accept, I will ask you to announce yourself in the chat just to make sure that you can participate in the post-game analysis. So, Selinator, hi, let's go. 10-minute game against Selinator. No, we have to coordinate, but sometime next week. Okay, so here, what should we play, guys? Let's play e5, which is something that Selinator and Selena. Okay, so Selinator, I think she's probably more familiar with e5, so let's play something that our opponent is likely familiar with. Bishop c4 is the Italian. Now, I have told you guys before that between the two main moves in this position, there's knight f6 and there is bishop c5. Which of the moves is safer? Which of the moves is safer? Not better, safer. Bishop c5, because it doesn't allow the fried lever. Again, the fried lever is fine for black, but you have to know a lot of theory. Here, the c3 line is quite a bit easier to learn, and there's less theory. So knight f6, now white has d4 or d3. Both moves are two main lines of the Italian. d3 is the fashionable line, and we get the main line of the Italian. This is all the rage at the high level today. So, okay, black's moves are absolutely not surprising. Okay, we have to castle, and at some point we play a6 to create a little hole, a little envelope for the bishop on a7. We can do that in virtually any order. We can also play h6, but bishop g5 is actually not scary. So let's castle, and I will show you guys if Selena plays bishop g5, then we will see why bishop g5 is actually not scary. So castles by white. Now, yeah, let's play h6 to stop bishop g5. It certainly is not going to hurt. And then we're going to play d6, and we're going to open up this bishop and try to get it to g4 if possible. So far, we're just developing our pieces. Literally nothing to write home about at all. So let's see what Selinator comes up with here. h3. Okay, so now we go d6. And we get a typical symmetrical Italian position, which it may look boring. It's not as boring as it seems. And Selena plays d4, which is a sensible move, claiming the center. Okay. Now the key question, I look at this position, we have to ask ourselves, okay, do we want to take on d4 or not? Or do we drop our bishop back to b6? Yeah, so we certainly don't want to take on d4. Why would we give away not only all of the center, but also let this knight develop to c3? So do not, just take a pawn just because you can. Bishop b6 is much, much better. And that's the reason we played these two moves, so that the e5 pawn would be safely defended. And now d5 by Selena. So she closes down the center. And it is clear that we have to move the knight. Where do we move it? We need to move the knight with foreknowledge of where that knight is going to end up. Okay? And those of you who have played this should kind of know that knight e7 is the typical retreat square, because this knight from e7, and white has the equivalent idea on the other side of the board. Sorry, on the reflected side of the board. This knight is going to come to g6. And the reason that the knight is very good on g6 is not only because it buttresses the king's position, but it can also go to f4. And f4, as you guys know, is a very strong defensive outpost. But knight a3 by Selena. So not paying attention to what the threat is. I feel like she didn't ask what the threat was, and it was better to develop the knight to d2. Now we can actually just take the pawn on e4. That is a juicy, juicy central pawn, and white's position already starts to crumble. So knight takes e4, quite simple. And we are now up a pawn. And knight a3 should not be sneezed at. Knight a3 is actually a typical move in these types of positions, because sometimes the knight comes to c4, but not here. Ooh, and now we have a five-head move. Who can spot the tactic? Who can spot the tactic? Bishop on b6 is pinning the pawn on f2, which means that the pawn cannot move, and because white has played h3, the square on g3 is undefended, which means we can put the knight on g3, and we can fork the rook and the queen. I don't know where that sound came from. Knight g3 forks the rook and the queen. So the moment that h3 is played, literally, you need to make a mental marker. Okay, the g3 square is now weak. Tons and tons and tons of games have been won on various tactics related to this square, particularly in this opening. Like, literally, that is how pervasive this is. And obviously, you have the reflected square on g6, and yeah, until it collapses here, we just win the queen. The bishop e3 makes sense. I mean, you intercept the pin, but sadly, the queen is now hanging. The game is over. Yeah. The game is over here. King h2. I mean, bishop takes c2 would have at least been the lesser evil. Now our knight can actually evacuate on what square? And I mentioned this square before. Where can this knight go? Yeah, I'm not sure what people are doing. Yeah, knight f4 is right. And this pawn on e5 supports the knight. All good. All good. Perfect. And we are up a queen. Isn't that more defense for not moving the h7 pawn in front of the castled king? Well, it's more defense for doing it in a very selective fashion. But stopping bishop g5 or bishop g4 is often more important than weakening the square. Like, weakening the square is a negative externality, but it's something you just have to you just have to deal with and solve when the time comes. All right, so g3, we take the pawn. There's many ways to win a position like this. In particular, we just need to kind of unfurl our pieces. And in order to unfurl our pieces, this knight on e7, where can it go? This knight on e4, where can it go? Yeah, knight f5. And I'll show you guys, by the way, a very, very classic Russian game where this concept of the weak g3 square was exploited in a very beautiful fashion. This game that I will show you guys after we finish this game, it made a big impression on me when my coach showed it to me many, many years ago. And now you will have a chance to go through, if I can find it, now you'll have a chance to go through the same process. Okay, knight e3. And then the queen can come out to f6. And we're attacking the rook on it. Yeah, queen can come out to f6, attacking the knight, simply bringing all the pieces into the game and delivering checkmate quickly. Yeah, knight takes g3. Well, knight takes g3, just king takes, right? That would blunder the knight. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, bishop e4. That's a good move. This bishop on e4, can we attack it while bringing another piece into the game? Probably not, guys. I'll go to sleep. Rook e8. Yeah, rook e8 simply. Well, Korchnoi definitely had, I think, a win, and that maybe that win I'm thinking about is a Korchnoi game, although I'm not sure. But yeah, we'll see. Now, if the knight moves from f3, then of course, queen f2 check will come. Yeah, queen f2 check will come. And now a simple train of logic. Queen g2 would be checkmate if it weren't for the bit. Okay, bishop g2, just queen takes g2. If king moves to h1, we can take that bishop. All right, good game, Selena. Let's take a quick look. So we had an Italian, and once again, no, it's all good. It's all good. I appreciate you putting yourself out there. That was instructive. A couple of really cool things that we can take away from this game. Don't worry about it. Yeah, one of many. One of many. So bishop c4. Knight f6 allows the fried liver with knight g5. You probably play that, Selena, knight g5. This is the fried liver, and black has to know exactly how to respond to the fried liver, which is d5, ed. And now, as I've explained many times, taking on d5 is a very famous mistake because of knight takes f7. So you have to play the move knight to a5. This actually sacrifices a pawn, so you have to be able to play this like semi-gambit line. And I don't recommend that to my students or to beginners. I think bishop c5 is just easier to learn. So c3 and d3, castles, castles. This is main line. h6, h3 is great. So you're actually playing great. And here I think the problem started. So I just think the move d4, it's tempting, but I don't think you're ready for it. because you're not developed on the queen side, right? You can see that particularly your bishop and your knight are not developed yet. So by playing d4, you are biting more. You are biting off more than you can chew, if that makes sense. Yeah, for 2 months that's crazy. So you're following the right principle, but you're slightly biting off more than you can chew. Your pawns just become a little bit too weak, and you could see that ultimately that's what killed you in the end. So why was bishop g5 not scary pre-castle? So bishop g5, black can simply play bishop back to e7. And the bishops are now at the standoff, where they basically nullify each other. Castle's d6, and you might argue, well, hasn't black lost the tempo? Yes, but now the bishop on g5 is like super awkward, and black can actually sidestep the entire operation with knight h5, knight f4. So this is actually the theory, and this is fine for black. So castle's h6, and the main move, Selena, is, well, white has several moves. You can play bishop out to e3. Sorry, in this position. You can play bishop out to e3. But the sort of purest way of playing is to go knight b to d2, then rook e1, and Selena, I want you to tell me if you are familiar with this maneuver. Where can this knight go? Where can this knight... Why do we play rook e1? Because it looks kind of stupid. Why are we putting the rook on a closed file? Well, we're doing that to vacate a particular pathway for the knight. And if you play the Italian, you have to be aware of this maneuver. Yes, knight f1 is correct. So bishop a7, knight f1. Black can do the same thing. And then you get the knight to g3 with the ultimate aim of getting it perhaps to f5 at some point. You don't want to do that immediately because bishop takes f5, but you want to kind of hover over that square. And now you get a very complicated position. I don't want to delve too deeply into it, but this is ultimately like the theory here. Okay. So d6, d4, bishop b6, d5, knight e7, and here the decisive mistake already. Because after you lose the pawn, it's just incredibly hard to play this position. Now, how should you have defended this pawn? Well, I think knight b d2 was possible, developing the knight and defending the pawn. I would have gone knight g6, knight f4 here. And I like black's position, but you can definitely play. You can still go rook e1, knight f1, knight g3, and white is still fine. But after knight a3, knight e4, perhaps here bishop e3 was one way to keep the game going, because this pin is really, really devastating. And once you play h3, you have to pay attention to the g3 square. Now, and after queen e2, knight g3, unfortunately, you should have moved the queen, but the reality is once I win the exchange, it's very, very hard to defend. You fought valiantly, but once I win the queen, it's just too many pieces and too many attackers. Nonetheless, that was a great game. Really appreciate it. And, it gives us a chance to talk quite a bit about an opening that a lot of people play. So that's just awesome. Now let me look up. There was a game that I referenced. Where black basically exploited that weakness of the g3 square in another opening, but he did so to great effect. And there's actually many games that feature a similar concept. Let me see. It is black to play in this position. And this is a game not of the person I thought of, but of Francisco Vallejo Pons, who is a very, very strong grandmaster from Spain. And he will demonstrate for us the application of this concept. So we see here a couple of similarities. This came from a French, but we can see here the fact that the g3 square is very weak. And we see the exact same pin that the bishop is exerting. But if we play queen g3 immediately, that move does not actually come with as great effect as it may seem. Because white can simply intercept the bishop. White can intercept the bishop, and he can do so with bishop e3, right? The problem is you are already threatening to capture the queen. If bishop takes e3, then rook takes e3. And, I mean, you cannot play bishop takes h3 anymore because of f takes g3. But, what can you do? What can you do? And this is something you must check for in any situation where you have two moves you want to play. What happens if I switch the move order? Thank you, Running Cat Dog. Indeed. Everybody's got to watch that still. You take on h3 first. And the point is, if g takes h3, now this move comes with check. Not only does it come with check, if you go king f1, then you get checkmated. And if you go king h1, well, I'm not exactly sure what black's best option is. Probably bishop takes f2. and then queen takes, oh yeah, no, then you take the knight, and queen takes h3, and black basically just gets a devastating attack. So Vallejo's opponent did not take on h3, but Vallejo went queen g3 anyway. And he used that g3 square as a springboard, and now his pieces combined to pressure the pawn, and he ultimately won a very nice game. So not an ideal illustration, but you can see that in many different openings, in many different positions, this particular square on g3 is very important, or correspondingly the square on g6 is very important when there is a pin going on along these corresponding diagonals, but also switch around the move order. You have to check for that. That's very, very important. Okay. So any questions about this game? And Selena, you know, don't be shy. I mean, really anything you want to know. It's you know, the Italian is a very hard opening to master, particularly if you just started. You're going to make these mistakes for a while. I mean, Charlie has been making these mistakes for like a year, and now we can see that things are starting to come together for him in certain types of positions. Was d5 a mistake blocking the bishop? Yeah, d5 was inaccurate, but I understand why Selena played this. I mean, at this point, White has to be very careful to keep her center protected. Maybe d takes e5 is a bit of a bailout move, but maybe something like this, just like keeping the pawn protected, probably would be a reasonable course of action, although black, of course, has solved all of his opening problems.